Hello and welcome. My name is Natty Cash, and welcome once again to another predictor video. But this time it is the NFL season predictions that I'm putting out. Again, this is the first time doing this, so please like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing. So we're gonna go division by division, and I'm going to show you my general predictions, and then we're going to take a look at the playoffs as well and confirm kind of what would I think the playoffs could turn out based on the predictions that I made. So first off, we're looking at the AFC East. Start off, we're going to look at the AFC West, and I think this isn't any surprise, but we have the Kansas City Chiefs being division champions again, because I think there's a lot of transition that's happening with the other three teams. I think John Harbaugh is going to start doing good things in San Diego, but I think it's still about a year away before they're really starting to push towards the playoffs and pushing towards the top. So I'm seeing about a 9-8 season for the Chargers here. I'm with the Broncos. I think Bo Nix could be the answer there. However, I still think there's going to be some growing pains, and hopefully there's not a lot of confidence lost on a rookie season, but we end up having a reasonable 5-win season for the Broncos. And for the the Vegas Raiders, it's hard for me to really see them be too successful this year. I do like Gardner Minshew as their quarterback, although you know that that's temporary. But it's hard for me to see them be too successful. They're going to be near the bottom, and maybe then they will be in line to draft a quarterback for next year's season. So that's my look of the AFC West. Moving to the North, AFC North, I see this as probably the most competitive division, and I think it has been for the last year or so. But I see three teams from this division getting into the playoffs. I think the Ravens are still going to be very good. I like the addition of Derrick Henry, although that may not translate as well to his own production, but I think then just another possible running weapon is going to really throw defenses for a whirl, and I think Baltimore is going to do well. I think they're just going to end up being with like a 13-4 season, probably sitting at that 2 seed in the AFC playoff picture. Then I have the Bengals having a resurgence. There's always one team that seems like they're worst in the division and they pop up and they become first in the division. I don't see that exactly for the Bengals, but a 12-5 record is still very respectable, and a big part of that is if Joe Burrow is healthy, right? If he's healthy, they're going to be successful. I think they're going to be that tough team to beat, sitting in that 5 seed in the first wild card position. And I still think Cleveland is got a strong team. It'll be interesting to see if Deshaun Watson stays healthy, if they can kind of continue that playoff presence like they did where Joe Flacco left them last year. But I do still see them kind of 11-6. Again, a lot of good defensive wins there and being able to sit in a wild card position. This does mean that the Steelers are going to be then in the bottom of the barrel here, and in a tough division, will have a losing record, which I know hasn't happened under Mike Tomlin. I don't know if it's been ever or if it's been a really long time that it hasn't happened, but it might be this year that they're at the bottom of the division. And it's not because they have necessarily a bad team. It'll be interesting to see what Russell Wilson can do at quarterback, but I think that they're going to end up having some struggles and finishing off roughly kind of a little bit below 500. That 7-10 mark is where I have them. So then as we move on to the AFC East, and again, another close division, and this is where then I had to make a tough choice. Where are the Jets going to finish? Right? Is Aaron Rodgers going to have enough of an impact to bring them into a playoff picture? And I think they're just going to do that. And again, it's tough to balance here. You can see that I have the division records for the top three as being 4-2, that they're going to each be taking points off of each other or wins off of each other throughout the year in their division matchups. But I still think Buffalo is the strongest team. They'll finish kind of in a 3-seed position. I think maybe this is the year that the Jets can just sneak in, and that in that case, the unfortunate team that's on the outside will end up being the Miami Dolphins, just missing out of the playoffs with a 10-7 record, which would be pretty brutal. Again, the Patriots are going to be transitioning this year, right? I'm curious of how Gerard Mayo as a head coach is going to land. They're starting with Jacoby Brissett, and then we'll see what happens with Drake May. Is he going to sit out the whole year, or is he going to jump in, partway through the year? We'll kind of see how that progression goes there. But this is kind of what I have as a prediction. The Jets just slightly taking over the Dolphins here and sneaking into that last wild card position in the playoffs. And then finally, we have the AFC South, which again, when we look at this team, it's the one team that was hardest for me to determine is the Indianapolis Colts. I'm very curious of where Anthony Richardson and how they're going to play this year. It could be the case where they're going to really come out swinging. But anytime that I looked at the schedule for the Colts, it seemed to me like, that doesn't seem like a matchup they're going to win. And that's another one that doesn't seem like they're going to win. And that kind of kept going on and on. And so I feel like 3 wins is really low for where the Colts want to be. And so maybe, that's going to be 7 or 8 wins. But I do see them kind of sitting in that third spot. I think the Titans are going to struggle. I'm curious if Will Levis can make some progressions towards a better success, but without Derrick Henry, you're now going to be relying on Will Levis more to throw the ball. Maybe you're going to get a lot more pressure. That's going to be a tough task this year. And then it's down to the Jaguars and the Houston Texans. CJ Stroud did really well in his rookie year, and there are certainly scenarios where then you have a sophomore slump, right? And so that certainly could be the case here. I think they've done well to build around CJ Stroud and make sure that he can be successful. In the other side, I think Trevor Lawrence also can be successful, but I don't know if they've done the same building around to then kind of bounce back and try to work to become division champions again. And so they're going to be competitive. They're going to be in the fight and potentially sitting close to a wild card spot, depending on how the other teams do. But I think the Jaguars are going to miss out once again, and the Houston Texans are going to be division champs once more. Again, with an 11-6 record, they are going to be the 4th seed, so we'll see what that looks like when we get to playoff matchups. Now let's take a look at the NFC, and we're going to start at the NFC East. Again, we look at this and say it's a 2-team division. I think the Giants are going to struggle. I'm curious of how Jaden Daniels is going to do in Washington. Again, similar to that discussion I had around the Colts, are there going to be wins for the Commanders to get in their schedule, or is it going to be, tough going? And I think for them, there's going to be a lot more tough scenarios than wins available. And so, again, I feel like 4 wins might be low for the Commanders, but maybe I don't see them getting above 6 wins this year either. Again, Jaden Daniels could prove us wrong and be sensational, but I think it's going to be still some transition and some difficult times until maybe there's a little bit more of experience at the quarterback position. Here's where then I'm unsure about. I've put the Cowboys ahead of the Eagles because my main concern is that the horrible run in that the Eagles had at the end of last year, is that going to continue? Okay, and even though you say, well, there's an off season, preseason, you come in with a new attitude. If it's a scenario where the head coach does not have any new ideas, well, teams are going to figure you out, and then you're going to keep losing, right? And if you don't have the leadership in the locker room to then, turn that around, right? And you've lost, a guy like Jason Kelce on the offensive side, which did a lot of the kind of defensive reads for that team. Is that going to be Jalen Hurts' job? So they're still a quality team, and I don't want to, knock them any further than that. So a 12-5 record, I think, is still reasonable, but I don't think they're going to be, maybe as dominant, or I don't see them as much as the favorite or top favorite to move to an NFC Championship game or even a Super Bowl appearance. So I have them at 12-5, and I have the Cowboys at 15-2. Right? Despite what people discuss about their playoff record, they do well in the regular season. Right? Dak Prescott has amazing numbers when you talk about the regular season, and I don't think that necessarily changes. Right? And I think this year Cowboys and Cowboys fans are going to get really hyped because they're going to be doing very well. And coming in with something like a 15-2 or 14-3 record, one of the top teams in the NFC, it'll just be interesting to see, well, what can they do in the playoffs? So this is where I have the Dallas Cowboys as the number 1 seed in the NFC. Can they do anything with that? I don't know. And the Eagles sitting in a 6th spot as one of the wild card teams. Then we move on to the NFC West. And in this case, the San Francisco 49ers, of course, are one of the top teams still here. Signing Brandon Ayuk, I think, is huge to keep some of the offensive cohesion there. And I think they're really investing in this window of opportunity for them to get a Super Bowl win, right? Eventually, there's going to be other contracts that come up, and it's going to be tough to kind of keep all of these pieces together. But I think with that signing, they're going to really invest that this is their time to be successful. And I don't think that that's really going to change, right? Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. There's arguments on whether he is elite, and we'll see what happens, if he can get more playoff success. But he doesn't need to be slinging the ball and putting up ridiculous stat lines or making amazing plays, because he has good players around him. So if you're playing with the people around you and doing well and being able to get wins out of that makes you a good quarterback. Brock Purdy, I think, and the 49ers are going to be top of the division. Then this is one of the 2 teams that I think might be unfortunate here in the NFC is the LA Rams. A 10-7 record is pretty decent, right? But I think that's going to not be enough to make a wild card place this year. And so the Rams are starting to get a little bit more age to them, aging squad, and so it's hard to know how much more times they're going to be able to keep moving forward and being successful before they start needing to make a change and kind of refreshing the roster up. But I think they're still a decent team, right? They're still I still think Sean McVay is a good coach, and seeing them at 10-7, I think is kind of around where I would expect them to be, and I think a lot of people expect them to be. Seattle and Arizona, again, there's going to be some tough times for a while, and especially with the other 2 in your division. And so I have them kind of below 500. Hopefully, then we can start seeing some changes for those franchises. But for now, I don't think it's your year. Then we get to the NFC North. Now, this one I look at, and again, I think the NFC North, just like the AFC North, is probably the most competitive division, top to bottom, in the NFC. And so you see I have there Detroit and Green Bay with 14-3 records. It's going to be tough to split those two teams, right? And it could certainly be the other way where Green Bay is the champions instead of the Lions, and so it's really tough to really to split these two teams. Detroit has done well and got to the NFC Championship game. And then like Green Bay also in their own right did well, and Jordan Love I think is going to have another good season this year. So I see those two teams up and around there. The one thing that I see a lot with pundits is a lot of people push the Bears up there too and say, oh, the Bears could be division champs. I'm holding back and I'm a little bit reserved on where the Bears are. I know there's a lot of hype about Caleb Williams. And you talk about how CJ Stroud in his rookie year took a team, got them to the division title, and got a playoff win, all that kind of stuff. But it's different because that was a weaker division. The AFC South is not as competitive as this division is. So you're going to have tougher matchups for Caleb Williams moving forward. I still think he's going to do well to improve this team, and I think a 10-7 record is reasonable. I just have them missing out on the playoffs slightly. And again, this is a coin toss, right? It could just be one game here or there, or a tiebreaker here or there that changes that. But I do see the Bears just missing out, but it gives them a good platform to then push forward. And again, the NFC North, I think, is going to be a tough division moving forward. The other thing that I see is, of course, the Vikings at the bottom. I'm excited to see what J.J. McCarthy can do next year. But I think most Viking fans recognize that this is going to be just a transition year. Sam Darnold is going to be at the helm, and we're going to get as much as we can get. Hopefully, we have a good season with Justin Jefferson. But generally, I think people recognize that the Vikings are going to then look to bounce into next year, hopefully, with a little bit better success. And finally, we look at the NFC South. Now, this one's a little interesting because generally, similar to the AFC South, right, there isn't very many scenarios where there are two teams that come out of this division. I do see that the Falcons are going to be better with Kirk Cousins as long as he can be healthy. But I also don't want to underestimate Tampa Bay. I think Baker Mayfield, he's bounced around a little bit, and there are concerns of, is he going to be an NFL quarterback? Is he going to be good enough? But I think he's done well enough to say that, yeah, you got Tampa Bay to a division title and then got a playoff win against an Eagles team. And I would say his performance was decent against the Lions in the playoffs as well. And so I don't think this is a team that's necessarily going away. One thing that's to their disadvantage is when you win the division, then you have to face all the other division winners from last year. So that's where, their schedule might look a little bit tougher than Atlanta's, but it's going to be close, right? And it was close even last year. A lot of people thought Atlanta might win and get the division title last year. But I think then this year Atlanta is just going to do a little bit better, and Tampa Bay will have to settle for a wild card position. Again, this is a toss-up. This last wild card position, is it Tampa Bay? Is it a Chicago team that can push their way in with a rookie quarterback? Is it the LA Rams team? That's where then I think this is really close when you look at that last playoff position. New Orleans and Carolina, I think there's still more struggle ahead. I'm curious of the changes that have happened at New Orleans, that I think they're going to get. Derek Carr's going to have a tough time throwing the ball there. And again, Bryce Young has to show me something in Carolina for me to then move him forward and feel like he's going to progress to be a NFL quarterback or a starting NFL quarterback for the foreseeable future. So that's where I have each of these teams. So just to kind of finalize things, I am going to go through kind of potential playoff scenarios as we go forward. So just a reminder that in the AFC, the number one seed I wouldn't play in the first round and that would be the Kansas City Chiefs. The differences between last year and this year is that we have the Bengals and the Jets in the playoffs instead of the Steelers and Dolphins. And so in this setup, we have Cincinnati and Joe Burrow traveling to Houston. And we've got the Cleveland Browns facing Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills at home. And then we've got Aaron Rodgers and the Jets going down to Baltimore to face Lamar Jackson there. And so when I take a look at these matchups, what I see is if Joe Burrow is on his best and can be playoff Joe Burrow, I think that even though CJ Stroud has some playoff pedigree, I think the Bengals could outdo them this time. But then other than that, I am going to be picking the home teams as I see Baltimore and Buffalo still being very strong teams and being able to push themselves into the next round. Then we go to the NFC, and you notice the Green Bay Packers as our top wildcard team go to Atlanta to face Kirk Cousins. We have the Eagles going to Detroit to face the Lions, and then we have the San Francisco 49ers hosting the Buccaneers. I think generally the San Francisco 49ers look really strong, and I think if the Buccaneers make the playoffs, that's good, but I don't think they're going further than that. I also then think the Lions are going to continue to do well in the playoffs. Again, having a home match against the Eagles, I do think the Lions can win that. And then I do see the Packers moving forward. Again, it's when we look at maybe a weaker division rival or division winner that sometimes that top wildcard seed ends up being the one that wins. Now let's take a look at the divisional round matchups. So as we take a look at the AFC, we end up having Baltimore hosting Buffalo. And then we have Joe Burrow traveling to face off against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And so when I take a look at these matchups, again, they're really tough, right? These are all quality teams that I think deserve to be here and any of them I think could progress to the Super Bowl. What I'm going to predict is that I think we could have the Ravens still win, right, and make their way to another AFC Championship game. And I think, and again, this is just a prediction, I understand how good the Chiefs are and have been for a long time, but we know in the past that they have lost to the Bengals under Joe Burrow. And so I'm going to then call an upset that Joe Burrow is able to go into Arrowhead Stadium and defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. Then we go and look at the NFC, and we have the 49ers and the Lions, and then we've got the Cowboys hosting the Green Bay Packers. And so where I see this going is I end up having the Niners winning. I think, again, a strong team here. And with Detroit traveling across the country, I think that is to the net benefit for the Niners. And I know that people are going to maybe say, oh, well, this happens all the time. But I gave you praise, Cowboys, in the regular season. But I might end up being another disappointing loss. And the Packers moving on to the NFC Championship game. So then now let's take a look at the NFC Championship, or AFC and NFC Championship matchups. So in the AFC, we have an interesting matchup here where we end up having a division battle with the Bengals and Ravens. And then in the NFC, we have a rematch of one of the divisional round playoffs where we have Green Bay being hosted by the Niners. In this scenario, when we do division matchups, it's always a lot harder to necessarily pick one over the other, and sometimes because of familiarity or rivalry, that it actually may be a benefit to the underdog. And so my kind of prediction here, just because of this particular matchup, that I am going to say that the Bengals will then go to the Super Bowl. Who's going to meet them there? Well, I think it's going to be similar. I know that Jordan Love is improving, and certainly they could make their way and do well pushing towards a Super Bowl. It might be 1 or 2 years too early, and I'm going to see the 49ers returning to the Super Bowl this year. So then finally, and I know that this is just for kicks because there's so many different things that could change from now and then. If my predictions are correct, I would end up seeing Cincinnati and San Francisco in the Super Bowl. And again, it would be an interesting matchup with Joe Burrow versus San Francisco and Brock Purdy. And this might be the scenario where then a repeat visit for the 49ers means that they have just a little bit more fire in them to be able to push forward for the last moments and be able to get the win. So I am going to choose the 49ers to win the Super Bowl this next year. Again, I know that many different matchups could change and go from here, but that's a little bit of fun. So I hope you liked my thoughts about each division and each team. And hopefully, if you like what I'm doing, I'm going to be doing weekly predictions of each of the games. So like and subscribe, follow along to what we do. If you want to comment down below who your predictions are, I'd be welcome to chat with you down there. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.